Welcome to the MVP podcast, where we talk about anything NBA. I'm Sam Holcroft, alongside Gage Zollicoffer and Peyton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. Today, we're going to do 2024 NBA free agency review. Almost all of the big names are gone. There's still a few left, but we're going to talk about some of the main ones and then some other kind of minor ones that we thought were pretty interesting. So, guys, who wants to kick this off, and who do we want to talk about first?
I'll talk about the Mikal Bridges, basically a trade, I guess. You could practically make it a sign and trade. Or I guess he didn't have to get signed; it was just a trade. But yeah, so he goes to the Knicks for lots of picks, pretty much their whole future of picks. They get all their picks back. You could practically look at it like a three-team trade with the Rockets. The Nets send the Suns picks to the Rockets. Rockets send the picks back to their own picks to the Nets. The Nets picks. Yeah, so if kind of break it down by each team, I guess here for the Knicks, it's another one of those Villanova guys that have chemistry with each other. He's on a pretty team-friendly contract. I think he's making around 23, 24 mil a year. He's a good switchable wing, good 3-and-D guy. He doesn't have to play a position that he isn't really used. I don't want to say used to playing it, but basically like a team position that he doesn't need to be doing as far as being the number one option. So yeah, he gets to kind of be that number 3, number 4 guy with OG Anunoby. And that's going to be a really fun, switchable 3-and-D team that's going to be a good supporting cast with Jalen Brunson and probably Julius Randle as well. So they get better as far as the Knicks, or as far as the Nets, the other New York team. They get their picks back, which is really nice from the Rockets. They kind of get to have a full reset. They don't get all their picks back. I believe the Rockets still have 2027, but they still get 2025, 2026. And then they get the swap right on 2028. So they get a lot of their picks back. They can do a final scratch, and I guess kind of start clean. So yeah, I mean, I think it was honestly a good move for both teams. I don't know how I feel about OG Anunoby re-signing for that big contract after you get Mikal Bridges, but basically it's a sign that the Knicks are kind of going all in on this year, and hopefully it pays off for them.
Gage?
No, he just said everything that needed to be said. Yeah, I ain't got no comment on that. I think it's funny how, like, at one point people were talking about, oh, is it possible that the Nets would be willing to build around Mikal Bridges? And I think they always knew that was never the case.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you feel like I mean, tinfoil hat, like, they did that sort of on purpose to maybe raise his trade value. But that,
I don't know if it worked, but
I mean,
I think it worked the first year, but then the second year it brought it back down to like more realistically what it probably should have been.
Well,
but
I mean,
for first,
2 years,
there's a lot for Mikal still.
I mean, 2 years ago, he got traded from Phoenix to Brooklyn at the trade deadline. So this was his first full season with the team.
Full season, yeah.
So, I mean, I was expecting maybe something at the trade deadline, but once he wasn't dealt, I was like, maybe they are actually building around this guy. I don't know what they were doing, but I think the Nets finally kind of figured out, like, you know what? Full rebuild time. We don't need anyone that's borderline star or in the star category right now. Just move on and just focus on the future.
Good for Shake, though.
So let's get Bojan Bogdanovic and build around him, right?
I do feel like I actually agree with Gage. I think that they always knew that he wasn't the long-term guy. I mean, they loved him, obviously. He was one of the most healthy players in the league for the past 3-4 years. Great personality, good guy, good player. But I feel like they also knew realistically the most they were going to get is him being the number one option is like an 8 seed, and a first round sweep probably, or win it or losing 5. So they were trying to raise his value, but the reason why they didn't do it sooner is because they knew to do that they had to get their picks back. And the Rockets were only going to do that if they got the Suns picks later. So that was just kind of the trade that they had to make. And I I didn't like it at first from the Rockets' perspective, but I'd like it now because if you think about how deep the Rockets team is, we don't have any more room for players. So getting the late picks from the Suns that could be valuable later on is pretty valuable. And then we got to keep one of the Nets picks as well, which they probably will only still be a bottom 4, 5, 6 team at that point. So I like it honestly for all parties. I don't say that often, but I like to trade from all parties, to be honest with you.
I will say that I don't think the Kevin Durant effect, the James Harden Kevin Durant effect, isn't truly over until Ben Simmons is off this roster, and I feel like it's a full rebuild.
That's like the last domino, right?
Yeah, until you
Yeah.
can finally move on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're done with the Mikal Bridges talk, who's the next guy we want to talk about?
I think it's only right if you start with it.
I start with
Yeah. Start with Paul George.
I think it's only right.
Making it hurt. All right, so Paul George signed with the 76ers. You know, ever since we lost to the Mavericks round 1, I've been bracing for it because I knew that odds are you weren't keeping Paul George. We weren't keeping James Harden. Both of them. Like one of them probable, both of them damn near impossible.
Yeah.
But I did get excited about the James Harden signing because he took what I believe is a pay cut because I think he could still get a max for some team. And it was just enough that they could have re-signed Paul George while trading a few other players to make the salary cap work. But then once I heard that he was basically like done with the Clippers, I was like, okay, it's over. He's going to Philly. That was the main spot. And, you know, I think him going to Philly is really good for them. I think that puts them, you know, I mean, they were the 7th seed last year, but that's because Embiid missed 30 some games. And I think someone like Paul George is kind of who they needed to pair with Maxey, who got, I think, his like rookie extension too. So he's locked in. Like this is going to be a good team next year. You know, we're talking about the Knicks going all in. 76ers just went all in, and it started with this Paul George signing too.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I think Paul George kind of wanted to stay from a player aspect, but there was no way he was going to stay in the first place just because of the new CBA. Because, I mean, they were ducking the second apron with this. That's the whole reason that this even went down. I think they signed Paul George for what he wants and just brings him back. But, you know, I'm not going to put this so much against what the Clippers have done. I mean, you can argue, you can make a debate like what is a bigger downfall, the big three of what the Clippers happened, or that, like, you know, that single year of what happened with or was it 2 years with the Nets with the James Harden, KD, Kyrie experiment, and then Clippers
I think it was a year.
Yeah. So I mean, and Nets had 1 year of pain, and Clippers had, like, you know, four years of pain, 5. So, but. I think the Clippers, even though they were willing to run it back again, but that CBA is insane. I don't know if you ever looked at those rules of what happens when you actually cross that second apron.
Your cap is hit after that.
The only team that can is the Celtics because they have a championship caliber roster. That's the only team willing to go over that.
Yeah, but you lose your draft picks. It's crazy. You know that? Like
what draft picks? Clippers don't have none.
I mean, any draft pick you have is automatically sent to 30th, which is nuts. I don't know how the players agreed to this. I don't know, but I've said my spiel
because that's how they get the most money. Because that's not something they have to worry about. That's a team aspect.
Yeah, that's the team. I don't care if our team has to pick 30th. Give me my extra $5 million.
Give me the $55 million I want. I would say, from a team aspect, I like it short term for the Sixers, but I don't think it's going to age very well because he's going to be making. I pulled it up. He's going to be making $57 million at 37 years old, and he's already shown that his health is a little bit shaky, and he's not the greatest playoff player. Pair that with Joel Embiid's contract and his injury issues. I think they'll be a good team, potentially great, but I don't think it really moves them to like the first or second, maybe even third best team in the East, because I still have the uh, uh, Celtics above them. I think I would probably still put the Bucks over them because I just trust Giannis a little bit more as far as health goes. And then uh, the third team you could debate could be either the Knicks or possibly the Cavaliers now that Donovan Mitchell resigned. So, they're still going to be in the thick of things. They'll be a good team, but that contract is not going to age well. And then you pair that if Joel Embiid asks out in a couple years, then you're just stuck with his contract and kind of just picking up the pieces. So, yeah, it's a good signing, but not anything that I think, really makes us think, wow, this is a real team now.
I think, yeah, I think they'll be third. I do think you're right about this
Yeah.
is going to end up being a bad contract, and I'm going to even argue that this is even the best Philadelphia team we've even seen. Like
Yeah.
I think
I
the
think
Jimmy Butler team was the best one, and they
I think
still
that's
biffed
yeah,
it.
that's yeah. Yeah, because you still don't even really have that coaching figured out. I mean, um, what's his name? He's solid. His name is escaping my head right now, but he's
Right
never
now,
shown. Yeah.
Nick Nurse.
Yeah, Nick Nurse is solid, but he's never shown to be like a championship coach. He's always had really good teams, but unless I'm missing something, right? He's never won a championship. Oh no, he did
Yeah,
with the
why?
Raptors. He did with the
Against
Raptors. Yeah,
against Philadelphia.
yeah, against the.
They
We're not
did.
gonna
Oh,
get into
the
it,
shot.
but
Yeah.
the hurt Warriors, and we don't have to get into it, but
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that.
yeah. But anyways, but yeah, I think we can move on to the next guy.
Gage, you want to bring someone up?
No, you guys go ahead and shoot because I can't really see anything. Go ahead and shoot me a
Well,
name.
I'll bring it up since I'm the Clippers guy. I do want to talk about James Harden and the contract that he got. Were you guys expecting him to get more or less money than he just got?
I don't know.
I
Like,
think. Go ahead, Gage.
I think people are selling him because he's not scoring 35.6 points like a game. And it really has been because James Harden has transitioned to being a second option, but I feel like that easily translates to his assists. I don't know why the media is pushing so hard that he's fallen off, but really he's just kind of deferred. And I mean, I think teams know that they can't win a championship as him as the main scorer, and he's kind of accepted that instead of forcing it like like a Russell Westbrook kind of mindset. And I guess I expected it to be even less because not because of the quality of player he is, but more of like that he is more of a team player and he's shown that he's willing to sacrifice part of his contract to get better players on the roster, as he did with Philadelphia. I was expecting something similar with the Clippers, knowing that Paul George was going to leave. Maybe he takes away a little bit more just so they can re-sign Paul George. I don't know what was going through his head, but I think this is a good contract. I expected less.
I expected about this. The only way I think he would have gotten more is if he went to a team that was really desperate for a point guard, like the Magic or the Spurs, a team that he would have not have wanted as many games with, most likely, or at least not have had another player better than him. So yeah, I think it's about right. I mean, when you compare it to other contracts in the NBA right now, and obviously it's kind of hard to compare because some of these guys got contracts before this new CBA and before this year, and some guys are younger, but he's getting paid roughly about the same as De'Aaron Fox, Bam Adebayo, Tyrese Maxey, LaMelo Ball, Donovan Mitchell, until his new contract hits. So, I think it's probably about right for the type of player he is, especially considering his age. I mean, maybe you could even make the argument that it's a slight overpay because of his age. But they kind of needed to do it. I don't know if I would argue that if it was an overpay. I think it's probably about right. But yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I don't really consider it an overpay, just knowing that like he could have gotten almost for sure more money somewhere else for
Hmm.
a lesser team.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if someone's willing to pay more, is it necessarily an overpay if you paid him and he signed with you? that's just kind of like my logic when it comes to something kind of like that. But yeah, I think it was good for the Clippers. Otherwise, they were sitting pretty tough with just Kawhi and Terrence Mann and Zubac being their only returning starters, having, only one draft pick this last year in the second round, and still, only a handful of guys that are under age 25. So I think they were willing, and maybe they were able to sense that Paul George was leaving. So let's give James Harden something where we know he won't leave, but something that's a short term, like a 2-year. So because the thing with Paul George, I think he signed a 4-year, right? With a player option.
Yeah.
So that Philly contract looks pretty bad, once it gets to year 4, because he's going to be 38 once that contract is up, maybe 39, depending on when his birthday is.
It might even look bad after 1 year if he gets hurt a lot.
Exactly. Where James Harden, it's just only 2 years. And I think there's also a player option. So he could dip after next year. So, and then you have a bunch of cap cleared up.
No player option. But if you think about it, if let's say he has a good season this next season, but you don't get over the hump, that next season you could trade him to a contender because he's only on a 1 year, so they don't even have to eat the cap. So you could trade him for assets at that point if it's a team that needs one more piece, like the Lakers or something, So, I mean, I think it's fine signing.
I think the Clippers will have a good year. I think they'll have a good year, not basketball-wise, but organization-wise with their new arena and having Steve Ballmer is a really good owner, real passionate guy.
Yeah.
But
I will say I don't expect the Clippers to be the type of team that they've been the past few years, though. I expect them to take a big jump down. Probably. It's just hard to know with Kawhi's health. If Kawhi can play 65 to 67 games, which he can, if he doesn't, though, they're probably going to be in the play-in-ish area with how stacked the West is. If he is healthy, they can be a solid 6 seed and probably lose in 5 or 6 in the first round.
I have a question that doesn't need to be too deep. Just, do you think this is a team they'll be to watch during the trade deadline? Is this going to be one of the hottest teams?
For
100%.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both
this
ways,
could be
because
probably.
They could either...
Go ahead.
I was going to say they could either sell if things are not going well, or they can buy if things are going better than they expected, and they can get a few more pieces to really try to make a run.
I expect the Clippers to probably be one of the biggest buying teams at the trade deadline, especially if they are in that play-in area or higher. Like if they're like where the Rockets were this last year, or like that 10-11 kind of area. It's like, why make a trade to try to get into the play-in? But if you're in the play-in trying to avoid it, or like a 4 seed trying to, make the push, hey, we thought it was our year with Paul George. This could be our year right now. We just got to get that missing piece.
And knowing that you don't need a 3-star team anymore to win a championship.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I see with that is that they don't have a ton of assets to trade, because you're not at this point with how, well, maybe not how, but the roster's a lot more shallow than it's been in a long time, and your picks are kind of emptied right now. You don't really have a ton of assets to buy. I could see them being a big selling team if they're at that point, and if their Rockets are just like, hey, what do you want for Kawhi Leonard? And the Clippers are like, we want 3 Suns picks, we want that Nets pick, we want Cam Whitmore, and we want Aaron Holiday. I think that could be a real trade. It's just an example, but a team that has a bunch of picks that are kind of ready to the Magic, a team that's ready to take that next step, that has picks from other teams, and they don't have to trade their own picks. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it.
Yeah. All right.
Let's talk about Klay Thompson. I'll jump into him. That sounded weird, but yeah. So with Klay Thompson, I think that he's gonna be a good spot up shooter for the Mavericks. Another leader on the team that can kind of make the young guys perform a little bit better. In general be a good leader. I don't see him being a good defender, but he can be an average defender. Still one of the best catch and shoot threats in the NBA. Doesn't have to worry about being the second guy. He can be the third guy and be fine. It's just going to make the gravity of the offense so much stronger. And he's got a good relationship with Kyrie Irving, so it's a good fit. It's hard to say that the Mavericks are going to get better. I think they'll be a better team, but to say that they made the finals this year, could have won, and getting Klay Thompson is going to take them to winning the championship, I think is a bit of a stretch. I just don't think that's how it works, because you still have to do all the same work that you did before, and teams are going to know how to game plan against you even more. So it's not just like, I don't think it's just like how people think, like, oh, they got Klay Thompson, now it's over, they're going to win the championship. Like, you still have to do all the heavy lifting to get there again. But I think I expect them to be a better team than they were last year. And we'll see if it works out for them in the playoffs.
I even feel like this sort of his decision was more of a emotional kind of thing. Like, where do I want to reset? I can make some money, but he has the rings already, so he's not like a guy who's like changing a team to get a ring or have a chance at a championship. I mean, sure, that played in some of his decision, but I really feel like he was just tired of being in California, wanted to try out a different team while he's still, a sought-after prospect. Because I think the Warriors did the Warriors offer him more?
I don't think they offered him more, but I think they offered him a good enough contract that it would have been like maybe $1 million or $2 million less. But then it's like you think about it, and it's like, well, why didn't they just offer him the same contract? Like, they could have easily done that. But from what I understand from reports, he kind of felt disrespected from the negotiations going back to last year's extension talk. So that was kind of a big part of it too, I think.
And also, a report that I heard was that he was wanting a similar contract that they gave Draymond, I think 2 years ago. But the Warriors' counterpoint was, well, we gave you almost $40 million contract, like 4 years ago or something like that. And 2 of those you were out for the entire year. So we were just eating up cap too.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's like, you could take that in a negotiation, but like, does it like matter? So I feel like the fact that they would have even used that as a negotiating tool, if I was a player, would leave a sour taste in my mouth. And if they were offering more money than the Mavs, probably come back and I just, let it chill. But the fact that they were giving me less and they were using that as a negotiation tactic, I'm probably like, I think it's time for a new scenery for me.
It's crazy that he only played 32 games in the regular season during the championship run, right?
Well, I mean, he came back from that injury.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy though. 32, get a championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't even one of his like better shooting years. I mean, his best year was, the year that they lost to the Raptors. Or I mean,
he got
getting
hurt.
there close to it, and then he got hurt in Game 6.
So you guys didn't do a lot of analyzing the actual player team fit. What about that?
I think it's up to Jason Kidd on the fit. I feel like the Mavs they bolstered their defense quite a bit at the trade deadline, which is why they were able to make a push. But it was that two-person offense that they relied on, switching every other possession. I think the Klay Thompson acquisition was, both Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving do like to operate in the paint a little bit, and I think they never really had someone as threatening as a shooter as Klay Thompson. I mean, I think who was their best three-point shooter besides obviously the two, Luka and Kyrie? It was
Kleber? Probably.
So it gives them a lot more room to operate. You saw in the series that they were willing to just sag off a little bit off of the 3-point, off of the corner three. So I think that's what it is. I mean, it'd be nice if Klay could play some defense too, but I don't think they're expecting that out of him.
Sam?
Yeah, I think that this is going to work well, especially when you have, with the Warriors, he wasn't really necessarily asked to handle the ball because it's mostly Steph and then sometimes Draymond and sometimes Klay. But here he doesn't have to bring up the ball at all. He just, finds his spot. If the defense sags off, hit a three. And I think that, this is the type of player that they were missing against the Celtics that would have helped them a lot to maybe win one extra game. Just because the Celtics team was, one of the better ones that we've seen in the finals. But if they were to face any other team in the East, like if they would have faced Indiana, and they had this Klay Thompson, I think they easily beat Indiana.
And it's sort of a little bit of a gamble too. Like they gambled on Kyrie, and it paid off. And so you're going to gamble a little bit on Klay Thompson as well.
It did pay off in the short run because they missed the play-in last year.
I mean, but
they were purposely tanking.
At least he played,
Yeah.
So who's going to get into DeMar here?
The guy that guy, the man that thought he was going to sign with the Lakers.
I didn't think he was going to sign with the Lakers. Well, the thing is, the Bulls were trying to set up, I think, like a good sign-in trade for DeMar, but he was really picky. He really had his sights on California. And I mean, he ended up with the Sacramento Kings. With the thing about DeMar is he's still a skilled athlete, but he is playing an outdated game, like everyone knows. He's kind of like, I mean, he still plays like Kobe-esque and is more willing to shoot in the gray area, which just, but he's averaging 24 points a game. He's able to hit the clutch shots. I don't see why you would give up that many assets for that guy. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to shade DeMar, but that's risky to bring a guy in like that.
Here's what it comes down to. I think this is what you're trying to get to. Does this take him to a top 3 seed in the West? Probably
I don't think
not.
so.
Probably not. So ultimately, it makes their floor a lot higher, but it just makes their ceiling not really change at all. Especially considering they're losing Harrison Barnes, which obviously you'll take that trade-off. But, it just doesn't raise your ceiling enough to really be too enthusiastic about it. He's a great player. He's going to turn 35 in, I think, 15, 20 days. So, yeah, I mean, good player. I'm not too worried about his style of game, but yeah, I just don't think it really beats out any of the top 3 teams, being the Wolves, Thunder, and Nuggets.
So personally, I've been pretty high on the Kings ever since 2 years ago when they beat the Warriors, and I think that this is something that will help them immensely. Being in this West is going to be tough because one injury could derail this team. I mean, we got to keep in mind this was the 10 seed, 9 seed in the West this year. And they were essentially the same team as they were 2 seasons ago. That was a game away. Oh, sorry, they didn't beat the Warriors. They were a game away from going to the second round. Took the Warriors to Game 7. Now, losing Harrison Barnes, I think is fine because he's still making a relatively large contract, and it's actually a huge pay cut. But I don't think they've really done anything else in free agency. I mean, they got cap to spend, but they don't have. There's really no one on the board that's going to make a big impact by this point anymore. Because if they could have got DeMar and someone else, like if they could have traded, had Caruso a part of that trade too, I felt like that would have been fairly nice as well. But in the end, I think that this definitely raised their floor. And if it raised their ceiling, it raised them from, potentially being like a 5 seed to a 4 seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Was it-
marginal
But,
increase.
Did
but a
they
team
need
that can
veteran-
compete in the postseason.
Did they need veteran presence on this team? What was it? I don't know.
They just needed more everything,
Star power.
honestly. Yeah.
I think an extra star, whether it was a veteran or not. I think they just needed another guy.
That's how the West is.
Yeah, and DeRozan was the biggest name. Everyone else basically was signed by Thursday last week, and he just signed yesterday at Saturday. He was like he's like the last big name to sign.
So tell us why you think Chris Paul is going to be the key to unlock Victor Wembanyama's potential.
I don't think you talking to me or Sam?
Sam, but
do
you
you
can
believe
tell.
it?
I don't think. I mean, it's a good revival. Like, I think it's a good career revival for him because he's not going to be asked to do too much. I mean, it really, and this is from an outside point of view, it doesn't seem, that hard for an aging point guard like Chris Paul to be able to deliver assists with ease to that, of a guy like Victor Wembanyama, a 7'7" guy. I think it requires an understanding of your sets, and I think he's gonna have a good year. Maybe he can get another contract.
I don't think so. At 40 years old, get another contract.
I mean, with the Spurs.
I mean, if anything, it's a one more year, a last hurrah.
Or retire with the Clippers.
Chris Paul for young players is a little bit of a miracle worker. Every time he plays with a young player, even Shai greatly benefited from just playing with Chris Paul. Greatly. That was the year before his big step, and I think knowing he has that kind of dynamic between younger players and he's able to get them involved a lot better, I think it's gonna benefit Wembanyama a lot, and I could see him playing a little bit. I mean, I think the Spurs are in a place where they're not necessarily needing the most talented cast yet until they feel confident that Wembanyama can be that guy. So I think he can get another contract there.
I don't know. He's been in the league 19 years, Gage.
Yeah, but he's one of the greatest point guards of all time too. So
I mean, either way, it's hard to know. If he has a solid year, I don't see why he couldn't get a $5 million contract to do one more year if he wants to play. But if he doesn't want to play because he might just retire or he doesn't stay healthy, then he's not going to. It's pretty much as simple as that. I don't think it's too much about his age being that he's the type of player. He doesn't have a lot of athleticism. He doesn't need to score a bunch of points. So I don't really think it has too much to do with age. But as far as Chris Paul goes on this team, I think he's a good veteran for everyone involved. I think it's the type of guy that Greg Popovich would want, being kind of the lead guard. It's really what they needed. I'm just not sure if he's going to be healthy enough to be consistent to help the team win. I don't really expect him being the type of guy that is going to impact winning as much as maybe some people would think. But I mean, they should have more wins than last year, but with how stacked the West is, I still don't think they're going to be close to the plan. And if they are, they're going to be probably 5-6 games out the 10 seed. So, you're not even thinking. And I don't even.
I real quick, Sam. I want to know what Trey Jones' assists per game were. Like, what was his assists per game?
Probably 6, 7.
Because he was the only guy who was able to dish dimes to Wemby.
6.2.
And he wasn't even 6.2. And does he have any stats before he entered before Wemby entered the league? I want to know if he had a jump. What was his jump?
Let's see, regular season averages.
He's a pretty young player too.
He actually had more before Wemby.
He had more before Wemby.
6.6.
I'm just trying to project what Chris Paul's going to be.
But yeah, technically more. I don't think you can project it because he hasn't played with an actual lob threat for a long time. Unless you consider Ayton a lob threat, I guess you could, but I don't know. But yeah, I would you guys agree? I don't think he's gonna be. I don't think this move or anything the Spurs did in the offseason is gonna make them a play-in team.
Oh
No.
no, this was
not
this
this
was
year.
this was not to make them, you know, a championship caliber team. This wasn't even necessarily for
Whoa,
them to
whoa,
make
whoa,
the play
whoa!
in.
I was gonna say,
Well,
you gotta
I
start. You
wouldn't.
gotta start by making the play-in,
Yeah,
then
well, I mean,
playoffs,
this
then
wasn't
championship.
you know, a big move. This is literally for development. You know,
Mhm.
because Chris Paul, like you said, one of the greatest point guards to ever play. He's gonna help out, you know, Stephon Castle, who they just drafted. He's gonna help out Victor, who, you know, could be one of the, you know, biggest generational centers that at least of our lifetime. He can help out other younger kids like Keldon and Devin, and like the guys that they already kind of decided like we kind of want to build around, you know, and hopefully kind of like build a kind of like Warriors team where like they don't go in and get guys with the exception of Kevin Durant, but they kind of like build their own team from scratch.
I have one thing to say. One last thing, completely unrelated. Where do you think fantasy wise? Where do you pick Chris Paul? Where do you draft Chris
Probably
Paul here?
undraftable.
He's undraftable.
Yeah, because he was last year.
I mean,
But
he
he's
was
on
also,
this team.
He's also, yeah, he was sixth man.
Can you trust
Maybe
him to
even
play
seventh
enough games?
At 40. That's tough.
I don't really even.
If he's there with my 11th or 12th pick, I'm easily
Yeah, like
taking
maybe
him.
like, but I would even take a flyer on like a young rookie that could play a lot of minutes. That could have just a
Yeah,
good
I would
rookie
maybe
season.
take Castle over Paul.
With the type of player
maybe.
he is, I wouldn't. But for example, I would take a guy like Shea to the Wizards or the Hawks over Chris Paul.
Yeah.
I just think he's gonna get more share, especially now that Dejounte's gone. You know, we didn't even talk about that. We didn't have that on our list.
It's really quick. My snippet on that is that I feel like the Pelicans have kind of been in that same alternate reality of the Clippers, knowing that their star always gets hurt, and then they're always chasing this point guard, and they can't really find who's going to be that guy, and they think it's going to be C.J. McCollum, and finally they got Dejounte Murray, one of the best two-way players in the league when he wants to be, and they basically got him for Larry Nance. So I think it's really good for Pelicans. I think the Pelicans can make a jump this year, and I don't know if too many people are expecting it because you can't ever expect injury bug, and I think the West just got insanely difficult. Like it just keeps getting piling on.
I hate it as a team that as a Rockets fan, a fan of a team that's like trying to find their ground and their footing. This offseason just made it even harder.
Imagine LeBron's legacy if he just stayed in the East. He should have just stayed in the East. Like
that's opening a can of worms. But anyways, just real briefly because we didn't have it as one of our main guys, even though we probably should have. It just happened so long ago. I think we didn't think about it, but I like it for the Pelicans. But ultimately, it's another one of those moves where sure it takes them from the 7-8 seed to the 5 or 6 seed, and it really ultimately depends on their best players. Ingram and Zion, and if they can stay healthy, because neither one has shown to be healthy. So that's what it depends on.
I think they're going to hang on to Ingram one more year because of this. I think Ingram was gone until this trade fell onto their lap.
I just don't think Ingram had any offers, and you can't hold on to him for 1 year because he's a free agent. I don't think there was any. I don't think they're going to do that. I think he's a deadline guy, and they're just going to get whatever they want for him because you don't come back from, I feel like, from what Ingram has been through with the Pelicans. Like, it's not going to re-sign unless you want to give Ingram like $53 million. And are you guys cool with that? Because that's a big no for me.
I mean, you already basically gave that to Zion, and he doesn't already play.
Well, and it's like at least when Zion plays, he looks like a top 15, top 20 player. When Ingram plays, like he's a good player. But for how long he's been in the league, he's only been an All-Star once, maybe twice. You know, he's been an All-Star just as many times as Ingram or Zion, if not less. No, not less. but probably once each.
I think
That's
it's
a good
once
question,
each.
actually. Let me look that up real quick. And just as a tidbit, obviously, if you're the Hawks, I mean, you needed to get some kind of trade, and it's kind of that same thing that I was saying about Ingram that I heard about Dejounte. There just wasn't a market for him, which is tough, but sometimes that's just how it works out, and you kind of just have to get what you want, or get what you can, rather. Um, so, I don't like it for him. I wish they would have got better draft capital, but they did get a Lakers pick. So Zion's made the All-Star team twice. Ingram's made it once. So that kind of tells you. Do you want to pay $50 million to a second option who never
The
plays?
Lakers
Probably
won the
not.
trade.
I mean,
Yeah,
duh.
they've won the trade, but
They won the trade after the first year, and
Yeah.
unless if Ingram brought them 2 or 3 titles, like they still would have won the trade.
There was that one time where the Pelicans were number 1 seed and like they owned all the Lakers picks.
That wasn't real.
I mean,
but
but then Zion got hurt.
right. So we got some quick hitters here. We're just gonna kind of go through real fast. I'm just gonna give my quick analysis on the first guy, Tobias Harris. It's the kind of shooter that you need if you're the Pistons. With the new coach coming in, they needed spacing. What? Did I say something weird again?
Bias over me.
I was just thinking about crumble cookies.
Anyways, yeah, he's a good shooter. Offers spacing that they needed. And he's gonna be a good leader. I don't know how good I feel about him being a vocal leader, but he's a guy that's gonna be a seamless fit into their offense. Play solid defense. And if you're the Pistons and you don't really have that free agency attractiveness, it's a solid move.
Imagine paying $180 million for a crumble cookie. I know Peyton would.
I don't even know what you're saying right now.
I'll show you later. It was a Tobias Harris
I know what
interview
you're talking about. It's just random.
about the crumble cookie. He said fans in Philadelphia would trade me for.
What do you think about Tobias Harris on the Pistons?
Just money.
I think it's personally, I think it's kind of like the type of veteran they needed, especially because they kind of felt like, Bojan didn't work out. And I think that, Tobias is a kind of a good guy to fit with their main 3 guys. I think they can finally move off, if they haven't already, Killian Hayes.
I think this is what actually I feel like happened. They signed Tobias Harris because Detroit Pistons have become a place to sign bad contracts in exchange for, like they've just been a place to take in bad contracts. That's just what the Pistons are going to be for a while. And that's okay because I think OKC was that team for a bit. And I think Detroit has finally just been okay with like, all right, we're just going to have a bunch of players and we're going to stockpile. I don't think they care about the money. I don't think they care about the team fit.
Sense necessarily.
Yeah.
I think they're built. Well, you're just taking players in, building them up, and training them away. I think Tobias Harris. I think his value will get large, and I think they'll be able to trade him for maybe future picks down the road. I don't think that they see him.
Why would you want to trade him though, if he's a good player?
Because you're not going to do anything with him. The Pistons are in a.
You can't just sign good players, expect to get better, and then trade them, and then you're just going to regress back to what you were.
I just don't see any direction for the Pistons. Like 2 years for what? What are you going to do in the 2 years?
Hopefully develop your young guys, show them what it takes to win. And
they
honestly,
also need to pay someone because
I was gonna say this. I think you act like this is a huge contract. This is like half of what he got in the last couple of years. Like $23 million for a guy that scores 17 points per game on, I think, good efficiency. Let me check it again. Yeah, I mean he's a career 37% 3-point shooter. What do you shoot from the line this year? I mean he shot almost 50% from the field and then 88% from the line. I mean. You're okay paying a guy $23 million a year who's a veteran and can do the one thing that you've never been able to really do ever since the Blake Griffin days, ever since Andre Drummond and Josh Smith and those huge teams, never been able to shoot ever, and that's been their Achilles heel, especially drafting Jaden Ivey, drafting Osar Thompson, drafting Jalen Duren. They just needed shooting so much, and they got a premium shooter. That's what it comes down to. Simple as that. And if you want to trade him, fine. If you can get assets, if you don't want to trade him, it's the one thing you needed is shooting and scoring for $23 million a year. I mean, I don't. Who else are they paying? You know.
And that's something that I think the new CBA is you have to be within, you have to spend a certain amount of money on your salary too. So they had to pay someone.
Use it or lose it.
And this wasn't even necessarily an overpay.
They just used
it. What they needed. They used it. Like
they used it on him.
And I think they still have to pay $1 million to avoid that too. So they didn't quite pay.
I just don't see any downside.
Yeah.
I just don't see any downside with this move.
I mean, if this was a Pistons team that was, well, I mean, even if this was
their rebuild, then yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, but they're 4 years into this.
They're the worst team in the league.
Well, then you got to start.
And why are you trying to fill the needs? Why are you trying to fill the needs of the worst team in the league?
Because hopefully they're not the worst team in the league again. But, okay, so let me ask you this. So if you're the new coach that's coming in, you're the front office that's been in the same spot in the last 3 years, and are you going to tell yourself, well, we were the worst team in the league last year, let's just not try to get better because we were just worst last year? That doesn't make any sense. You're going to try to get better.
And the lottery hasn't been nice to them the last 5 years either.
You just can't keep doing this thing over and over and over and over and expect to get better.
And it
doesn't work like that.
I feel like they picked their scapegoat, and that was Monty. Because they fired him 2 weeks ago.
Rightfully so, in my opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, but they were the worst team in the league, and that's how that front office is saying, that's why we were the worst team in the league, by firing him. Because Cade's going in year 4 next year, Ivy year 3. So this is the time that these guys should be making that big jump. Otherwise, they might just end up starting to kind of you start realizing that maybe these guys aren't, the guys that we drafted in those top 10 picks or whatever.
Well, okay. And you can't, if you're a young team, you don't just make jumps just being a young team. It takes leadership. Why do you think the Rockets signed Fred and Jeff Green and Dylan Brooks and now Steven Adams? You can't just make a jump just because you're young and you expect to get better. Teams that have done that have just always just plateaued. Because you just don't get better without leadership like that. And Monty was a problem too, there wasn't leadership there. But you look at teams like the Thunder, talked about it earlier, with Chris Paul mentoring Shai and the veterans that they've had throughout their rebuild, Lou Dort, who was the big that they had. I don't know, but I don't remember his name either. But it's just teams like that where you need leadership. Look at the Phoenix Suns. They had no leadership, but you bring in Chris Paul. And it's funny we mentioned Chris Paul again, but and funny enough, Monty Williams was the coach of that team. Obviously that team had a much higher ceiling, so it kind of worked. But yeah, I don't think the argument of, well, we were just bad, so let's just not try to sign anybody because we're bad. I don't think that works, especially for a team that you can't just sign free agents. Realistically, who wants to go to Detroit? I mean, and they didn't even have to overpay for him to go there. So I just don't see how there's a downside to this. And if, like you said, if it doesn't work out, you just trade him. Simple as that.
Yeah, because with that contract, I feel like you could get something for assets at the trade deadline. And we were talking about it earlier, the Clippers. If they feel like that they're a Tobias Harris away from, being into that 4 or 5 seed area where they feel like that they can compete, that's another guy that they could trade back just to bring him back when they traded for him from the Pistons originally. This roller coaster kind of got off what it was supposed to be. This was not supposed to be a 5 to 10 minute per guy. But basically, I want to sum it up by, I would hate to be a Pistons fan.
Okay.
And I apologize to all Pistons
fans. I agree with that.
On to the next guy.
And Wizards.
That team too.
And Warriors.
Hield, did you want to break this one down real quick since you pulled up his tab, or?
Yeah. With Buddy Hield, this was part of a 6-team trade, first ever, might I add.
2K.
You can't
Draft
even do this in 2K. You can't even do it. You can only
This
do
is-
3 teams in 2K.
What is it? Draft simulator. What's the thing that everyone uses? The
Draft
Draftspo.
track?
Or
Yeah.
yeah, Draftspo, right?
Draftspo, yeah.
draft, or something.
Or the trade
So-
machine or something.
Trade
yeah.
machine. This is a trade
Yeah.
machine trade.
Yeah.
But I don't think it happened like all at the same time. I think it was like a domino effect.
It,
So I
it
don't know if
added it added
Yeah.
all up.
Good.
But-
Buddy
Go
Hield
ahead.
though. Buddy Hield.
Yeah. I feel like with the year that Buddy had, let me pull up his stats real fast. I feel like he's not going to fill the hole of a Klay Thompson, whether it's production or just role on the team. But I do feel like if the Warriors want to be somewhat contending, and I clicked on the wrong team, of course, that this is a good opportunity for him to prove like, hey, I deserve more than just my 19 mil. And because if I remember correctly, he played a pretty good role. Yeah, he was almost a 39% 3-point shooter last year while shooting 6.5 threes a game for the Sixers.
He's new Clay.
He's new Klay. Is that what it is?
I mean, honestly, what I have to say about this sign and trade, I guess you could say, or just sign whatever acquisition, I could say. I think that he's kind of he's more of an off-brand Klay Thompson. You hope that he can be 60 to 65% of Klay Thompson. I think he'll offer a little bit better defense, but just not as consistent of shooting, at least regular season. But in my opinion, unless Steph Curry goes supernova and scores like 29, 30 a game, I have the Warriors being in the same spot, if not worse, because of how much tougher the West got this year, and they did not look great last year as well.
Yep.
New Clay, who this?
Might as well have him wear number 11.
Yeah.
So we're on to Valanciunas here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These ones I feel like can just be kind of quick. Valanciunas goes to the Wizards. Leader presence. Alex Sarr's not playing the 5. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got on that one.
Good contract. Sucks that Pelicans
yeah.
lost him. It's good.
Yeah, he was probably their stabilizing force for the past few years.
Yeah.
Good player. I don't think we have too much to say about him here.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about Valanciunas. It's the Wizards, so
It's the Wizards. Yeah, pretty much.
He might have just signed his career death contract too.
Yeah. Let's talk about the combo of Hartenstein and Caruso out of the Thunder. I think this makes the Thunder probably, I think, the deepest team in the West overall. From 1 through 10. Because I think at this point they have everything now. I think they have a solid big man backup. They have a solid starting 5 that can offer defense, shooting, length, height, scoring. I just think that they have a great roster. They still have all those picks. They want to make another trade for Lauri Markkanen later in the season. I think that could happen, but otherwise, it's a good signing, and yeah. I don't have anything really else to add to it. I've always liked Isaiah Hartenstein ever since he's been on the Rockets. And Alex Caruso is one of the best role-playing defenders in the league. So good acquisitions there.
Looks like we lost Gage.
Yeah, just run it.
But yeah, with Isaiah Hartenstein, I think that this is a good signing for OKC to help, like you said, make them pretty deep. But how many minutes is he going to play? Because you're paying him almost $30 million a year to be your 6th man. And I think what this is telling me is they are expecting J-Dub to walk next year. And
Really?
they're going to be totally cool with that. I mean,
wow.
Why pay J-Dub when you're already paying Hartenstein $29 million a year?
Because they play different positions.
I mean, what J-Dub plays the 4.
Yeah, I think if Hartenstein is a 5.
Okay, What about Chet?
Well, he's going to be their starter. But I'm
Exactly.
I think
So you're paying someone almost $30 million to be your
he's a
backup.
center.
Your backup center. And you're going to
Taking a
also
look
pay
at this
J-Dub
contract.
because then what's going to happen? A year after that, you have to pay Chet. So are you going to let Chet walk or are you going to let J-Dub walk?
I think you're going to let Lou Dort walk.
Well, Lou Dort's gone regardless. He's already walking.
Yeah.
He already has his walking shoes on.
But that's a lot of money off the books, is it not? That's $18 million. I think what they're hoping is that they can get.
Just a second. Go ahead and mute Gage.
I think they're hoping that J-Dub will sign for cheaper than what he's probably worth on the open market, somewhere around that $23-24 million range. And I think that they might be able to pull it off because of how strong the culture has gotten and winning. But if he has a crazy good year and he's like an all-star, or forbid that he's like an all-NBA player, which I don't think is completely out of the cards. It's unlikely, but I think it could happen. Then they're gonna have to give him a max, and then they can't do that. But I think if he were to sign for a little bit cheaper, because Lou Dort's making 18 million, I think about 18 million. So if you just had to pay him an extra 5 million, then you're gonna have to take that, and then also you're probably gonna have to let Alex Caruso walk, after the year. Which is unfortunate. I just don't think you want to lose J-Dub.
No, and you don't want to, but if you're cool with, because Shai's going to be a max player.
We might just want to do the outro. I think we might just want to cut that part.
Yeah.
This whole part out.
But yeah, anyways, I just think that, Shai's a max player. You got to sign him. You already signed Hartenstein to a 3-year, almost $30 million. You're going to have to pay Chet, in 2 years. And J-Dub, yeah, you're going to have to pay next year as well. So it's going to be tough. So
it is. That's what happens though when you draft good players and you still have draft picks.
But then you go out and sign someone to a big contract that
maybe you're hoping.
Yeah, you got
that
depth, but
maybe you're hoping that you can trade J-Dub and picks for like a top 5-6 player if they ask, like Giannis.
Yeah,
Giannis,
if he's fed up.
That's what I'm. Yeah. So yeah.
But anyways, good free agency talk. Even if we didn't get the signings that we wanted, mostly just talking about myself here. But hey,
yeah.
At least James Harden stayed.
You still got that.
Yep. But once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
I've been Peyton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.
You got to do that part again.